The emergency beacon cut through the static like a knife through flesh, its piercing wail echoing across the bridge of the UES Defiance. Commander Sarah Chen's coffee mug shattered against the deck plating as she bolted upright from her captain's chair, her dark eyes scanning the holographic displays that suddenly blazed to life around her. "Report," she barked, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd seen too much death and destruction in the outer colonies. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, the communications officer, looked up from his console with a face pale as lunar dust. "Commander, we're receiving a priority alpha distress signal from the Kepler 442 system. It's from the civilian transport New Horizon." Chen's blood ran cold. The New Horizon was carrying over 3,000 colonists, families, children, elderly settlers seeking a new life on the agricultural world of Haven's Rest. She'd personally overseen their departure from Earth Station 7 just 3 weeks ago, had shaken hands with Captain Rodriguez and wished him fair winds and following seas. "Put it through," she commanded, her knuckles white as she gripped the armrests of her chair. The main viewscreen flickered to life, revealing the haggard face of Captain Rodriguez. His uniform was torn, blood trickling from a gash above his left eye. Behind him, emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the bridge, and the distant sound of screaming could be heard over the static. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the civilian transport New Horizon," his voice cracked with desperation. "We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Repeat, we are under attack. They came out of nowhere, ships unlike anything in our databases. They're boarding us. They're taking our people." The transmission cut to static for a moment before Rodriguez's voice came through again, more frantic now. "They're not trying to destroy us, they're hurting us like cattle. The children, oh God, the children are screaming. If anyone receives this transmission, please, we need help. We're defenseless. They're in the ship now. I can hear them in the corridors. They're coming for the bridge. Please, if there's anyone out there." The transmission ended with the sound of plasma fire and inhuman screeching that made Chen's skin crawl. The viewscreen went dark, leaving only the soft hum of the Defiance's systems and the heavy breathing of her crew. "Sir," Webb's voice was barely a whisper. The signal originated from the edge of the Kepler 442 system, approximately 47 light-years from our current position. Chen stood slowly, her mind racing. 47 light-years. Even at maximum warp, it would take her ship 2 days to reach the system. 2 days while 3,000 innocent people were being, what? Enslaved? Experimented on? The thought made her stomach turn. "Helm, set course for the Kepler 442 system, maximum warp," she ordered. "Communications, send a priority message to Starfleet Command. Include the full recording of Captain Rodriguez's transmission." "Aye, sir," came the responses from around the bridge. But Chen knew, even as she gave the orders, that by the time they reached the system, it would be too late. The Defiance was a single ship, a heavy cruiser with a crew of 400. What could they do against an unknown enemy that had overwhelmed the civilian transport with such ease? The answer came 12 hours later, when Lieutenant Webb looked up from his console with an expression of shock and disbelief. "Commander," he said, his voice trembling. "I'm receiving a response from Starfleet Command. It's not what we expected." Chen turned from the tactical display where she'd been studying star charts with her first officer, Commander David Park. "What is it, Lieutenant?" Webb swallowed hard. "They're activating the Emergency War Powers Act. All civilian shipping is being recalled to Earth and the inner colonies. And sir, they're issuing a Class 1 Deathworld mobilization order." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the life support systems. Chen felt the blood drain from her face. In her 15 years of service, she'd never seen a Class 1 Deathworld mobilization order. It was the stuff of legends, whispered about in the academies and buried deep in classified files. "Are you certain, Lieutenant?" Her voice was barely audible. "Yes, sir. The authorization codes are valid. It's signed by the President himself." Chen closed her eyes for a moment, remembering her history lessons at the academy. Humanity had been alone in the galaxy for so long, exploring, colonizing, pushing ever outward into the void. They'd encountered ruins of ancient civilizations, strange phenomena, and hostile environments that would kill a human in seconds. But they'd never encountered active, hostile alien life. Until now. The Class 1 Deathworld Mobilization Order was humanity's ultimate contingency plan. It was based on a simple, terrifying premise: if humanity ever faced an existential threat from hostile aliens, they would unleash the most dangerous weapon in their arsenal, themselves. Earth wasn't just humanity's homeworld, it was a death world. A planet so hostile, so dangerous, that the very fact that humans had evolved there made them among the most adaptable, resilient, and downright terrifying species in the galaxy. The Order would mobilize not just the regular military, but every human from the death worlds, the mining colonies in asteroid belts, the underwater cities beneath crushing ocean depths, the settlements on worlds where the air was poison and the gravity could crush bones. Communications, Chen said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. Send a message to all human colonies, stations, and outposts. Use the emergency broadcast network. Tell them the nightmare scenario has finally happened. We are no longer alone in the universe, and we are at war. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of activity. The Defiance pushed her engines to their limits, racing through space toward the Kepler 442 system. All around human space, the greatest military mobilization in history was beginning. Ships that had been mothballed for decades were being brought back online. Mining vessels were being fitted with weapons. Even the notorious prison ships from the Titan penal colony were being pressed into service. But it was the messages that came flooding in from the outer colonies that truly drove home the magnitude of what was happening. The asteroid miners of Ceres, who worked in zero gravity and hard vacuum as easily as others walked on solid ground. The deep-sea colonists of Poseidon, who lived in cities beneath 10 miles of crushing ocean. The ice miners of Europa, who thought nothing of working in temperatures that would flash freeze unprotected flesh in seconds. The Deathworlders were coming to war. Commander Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance as they dropped out of warp at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they found there would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life. The New Horizon was still there, drifting in the void like a ghost ship. But it wasn't alone. Surrounding it were dozens of sleek, organic-looking vessels unlike anything in human databases. They moved with an almost biological fluidity, their hulls shimmering with an oily iridescence that hurt to look at directly. Scanning the New Horizon, reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson from the science station. I'm detecting minimal life signs aboard. Maybe 50 people, scattered throughout the ship. The rest. He paused, his face grim. The rest are gone. Gone where? Chen demanded. I don't know, sir. But I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the alien vessels. They appear to be processing something. Organic matter. Chen's blood ran cold. Processing. The word carried implications that made her stomach turn. Any sign of the missing colonists? Negative, sir. But, Commander, I'm detecting something else. These alien ships, they're not just harvesting the colonists. They're changing them. Before Chen could ask what he meant, the viewscreen flickered to life. The face that appeared was human, but wrong. The eyes were too large, too black, and the skin had a translucent quality that revealed veins pulsing with something that wasn't quite blood. Welcome, fellow sapiens, the thing that had once been human spoke in a voice like broken glass. I am what your species calls Captain Rodriguez. I have been improved. Enhanced. Made perfect. Chen fought the urge to vomit. What have you done to him? We have given him purpose. As we will give purpose to all of your kind. You are a warrior species, born of a death world. You will make excellent soldiers in our grand design. Like hell we will, Chen snarled. The thing that had been Rodriguez tilted its head in an oddly insectal manner. Your resistance is anticipated. It is part of what makes you valuable. But resistance is futile. We are the collective. We are eternal. We are. The transmission cut off as the alien ships began to move, converging on the Defiance with predatory grace. Red alert! Chen shouted. All hands to battle stations. Helm, evasive maneuvers. Tactical, target the lead vessel and fire everything we have. The Defiance shuddered as her weapons systems came online. Quantum torpedoes and plasma cannons lit up the void, striking the alien ships with devastating force. But the strange, organic hulls seemed to absorb the damage, rippling like water before solidifying again. Minimal damage to the enemy vessels, reported the tactical officer. They're adapting to our weapons. Chen's mind raced. Adapting. These weren't just alien ships, they were something far worse. They were a collective intelligence, a hive mind that learned from every encounter, every battle, every conquered species. "Sir," Webb called out from communications, his voice tight with urgency. "I'm receiving multiple transmissions from across human space. The alien ships, they're everywhere. Earth, Mars, the outer colonies, they're all under attack." Chen felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. The Defiance was outgunned, outmaneuvered, and facing an enemy that seemed to adapt to every strategy they employed. But she had one advantage the aliens didn't understand: she was human, and humans didn't know how to quit. "Open a channel," she commanded. "All frequencies, maximum power." "Channel open, sir." Chen took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would either save humanity or doom it. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiance. To all human forces, all colonies, all stations, and all vessels capable of receiving this transmission. We are facing an enemy unlike anything we have ever encountered. They are not here to negotiate. They are not here to trade. They are here to harvest us like cattle." She paused, watching as more alien ships moved to surround her vessel. "But they have made one critical error. They have attacked a species that evolved on a death world. A species that has survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have wiped out any other form of life. They think they know what humanity is capable of. They're wrong." The alien ships were closing in now, their weapons charging with an ominous glow. Chen could see the bridge crew looking at her with a mixture of fear and determination. These were good people, trained professionals who had sworn an oath to protect humanity. They deserved to know what they were dying for. "To all human forces," Chen continued, her voice carrying across the void to every ship, every station, every colony in human space. "Remember who we are. Remember what we are. We are the children of Earth, the inheritors of a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We are the species that looked at the vacuum of space and decided to live there. We are the people who colonized worlds of ice and fire, who built cities in the depths of hostile oceans, who made homes in the hearts of asteroids." The alien weapons fired, and the Defiance shook under the impact of energies that should have vaporized her. But Chen kept talking, even as alarms blared and systems failed around her. "We are humanity," she shouted over the chaos. "We are the Deathworlders. And we do not go quietly into the night." The transmission ended as the Defiance disappeared in a ball of plasma fire. But her words had already spread across human space, carried by quantum entanglement communicators to every corner of the galaxy where humans had dared to set foot. And in the depths of space, in the mining stations and research outposts, in the military bases and civilian colonies, 300 billion humans heard the call to war. The response was immediate and overwhelming. From the ice mines of Pluto came the miners, their bodies adapted to crushing cold and radiation. From the deep-sea cities of Europa came the aquanauts, comfortable in environments that would crush normal humans like insects. From the asteroid belts came the rockhoppers, who thought nothing of working in zero gravity while dodging chunks of debris moving at thousands of miles per hour. But it was from Earth itself that the most terrifying response came. The homeworld, the death world that had forged humanity in the fires of evolution, began to wake up. Military bases that had been dormant for decades roared to life. Shipyards that had been building civilian vessels switched to war production. And from the depths of classified bunkers came weapons that had been designed but never built, technologies that had been deemed too dangerous for peacetime use. The Class 1 Death World mobilization order had been given, and humanity was responding with the full fury of a species that had never learned to surrender. In the Tau Ceti system, the mining colony of New Siberia received the transmission just as alien ships appeared on the edge of their sensor range. The colony administrator, a grizzled veteran named Boris Petrov, looked at the approaching vessels with the same expression he'd worn when facing down claim jumpers and pirates. So, he said to his deputy, a woman named Elena Vasquez who had survived the methane storms of Titan. "They want to harvest us like cattle, do they?" Elena smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "I think they're about to learn why you don't corner a pack of wolves." The mining station's defenses were minimal, a few automated turrets designed to deal with asteroids and debris. But what the aliens didn't know was that every piece of mining equipment in the colony could be turned into a weapon. The massive ore crushers became kinetic projectiles. The fusion torches became devastating beam weapons. The mining charges became ship killers. And the miners themselves? They had spent their lives working in conditions that would kill most humans in seconds. They were used to thinking fast, acting decisively, and never, ever giving up. When the alien ships moved in to begin their harvest, they found themselves facing not helpless colonists, but a pack of Deathworld predators who had been backed into a corner. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the alien ships were nothing but expanding clouds of debris, and the miners of New Siberia were already preparing for the next wave. Similar scenes played out across human space. On the ocean world of Poseidon, the deep-sea colonists used their knowledge of pressure and fluid dynamics to turn the ocean itself into a weapon. On the desert world of Aridus, the settlers who had learned to survive in an environment where the sand could strip flesh from bone showed the aliens what true environmental warfare looked like. But it was the response from Earth that truly showed the galaxy what humanity was capable of when pushed to the brink. The first ships to launch were the defense platforms that had been hidden in the asteroid belt, massive weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining stations. They moved with the silent efficiency of apex predators, their hulls black as space itself, their weapons systems powered by the same fusion reactors that had once powered the terraforming of Mars. Behind them came the fleets that had been held in reserve for precisely this scenario. Ships that had been designed not just to fight, but to win at any cost. Vessels that carried weapons banned by every interstellar treaty humanity had ever signed, crewed by soldiers who had been trained to fight in environments that would kill most life forms. And at the head of this armada was the ship that would become legend, the UES Retribution, a dreadnought-class vessel that had been built in the shadow of Saturn's rings, powered by artificial black holes and armed with weapons that could crack planets. The captain of the Retribution was Admiral Marcus Kane, a man who had spent his career fighting pirates and separatists in the outer colonies. He was a product of the Martian military academies, trained in the harsh realities of void warfare and the bitter lessons of human conflict. When he received the mobilization order, Kane stood on the bridge of his ship and looked out at the armada assembling around him. 5,000 vessels, ranging from massive dreadnoughts to small, fast attack craft. Each one crewed by humans who had heard Commander Chen's final transmission and answered the call to war. "Navigation," Kane said, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had never lost a battle. "Set course for the Kepler 442 system. Maximum warp." "Sir," his first officer, Captain Sarah Mitchell, looked up from her tactical display. "Intelligence estimates that we're outnumbered at least 10 to 1. The alien fleet is massive, and they've had time to establish positions throughout the system." Kane smiled, and it was the expression of a predator who had just caught scent of prey. "Captain Mitchell, in all your years of service, have you ever known humanity to be deterred by bad odds?" Mitchell thought of the history lessons she'd learned at the academy. The Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans had held off an entire Persian army. The Siege of Stalingrad, where civilians had fought with broken bottles and kitchen knives against one of the most powerful military forces in history. The colonization of Mars, where the first settlers had built cities in an environment that tried to kill them every single day. "No, sir," she said. "I haven't." "Then let's go remind these aliens why you don't start a war with a species that conquered a deathworld." The journey to the Kepler 442 system took 3 days at maximum warp. During that time, the human fleet grew as more ships joined the armada. Mining vessels from the outer colonies, their hulls reinforced with armor plating and their holds filled with kinetic weapons. Research ships from deep space, their sensor arrays modified to detect enemy vessels and their laboratories converted into weapons labs. But it was the ships from the prison colonies that truly showed the desperation of humanity's situation. The maximum security facilities on Titan and Europa had been emptied, their inmates given a choice: fight for humanity or die with the rest of the species. Most had chosen to fight, and the prison ships that joined the Armada were crewed by the most dangerous criminals in human space. Kane watched the tactical display as the mismatched fleet took formation around his flagship. It wasn't pretty, and it certainly wasn't regulation. But it was human, and that was what mattered. "Sir," the communications officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission from the fleet. The captains are requesting permission to address the Armada." Kane nodded. "Put it through." The main viewscreen flickered to life, showing a grid of faces from across the fleet. There was Captain Rodriguez of the mining ship Iron Will, his face scarred from years of working in the asteroid belts. Captain Chen of the research vessel Discovery, her eyes bright with the intellectual curiosity that had driven humanity to the stars. Captain Morrison of the prison ship Redemption, his expression cold and calculating. And dozens of others, each representing a different aspect of humanity's far-flung civilization. "Admiral," Captain Rodriguez spoke first, his voice carrying the rough accent of the outer colonies. "We've been monitoring the alien transmissions. They're not just harvesting humans for soldiers. They're changing them. Turning them into something else." Kane's jaw tightened. "What do you mean?" "We intercepted a transmission from one of their converted humans," Captain Chen added. "The neural patterns, the biological markers, they're human, but they've been altered at the genetic level. These aliens aren't just conquering us. They're assimilating us." The implications hit Kane like a physical blow. An enemy that could turn humans into weapons, that could use humanity's own strengths against them, it was a scenario that military strategists had nightmares about. "Then we make sure they don't get the chance," he said. "All captains, prepare for battle. We're going to hit them fast and hard, before they can adapt to our tactics." The fleet dropped out of warp at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and what they found there defied comprehension. The alien presence had grown beyond anything intelligence had predicted. Hundreds of ships filled the system, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. But it was the massive structure at the center of the system that made Kane's blood run cold. Where the star should have been, there was something else, a vast, organic mass that fed on the star's energy, growing larger with each passing moment. "My God," whispered Captain Mitchell. "They're not just harvesting our people. They're harvesting the star itself." Kane stared at the impossible sight, his mind racing. This wasn't just an invasion, it was a complete transformation of the solar system. The aliens weren't here to conquer human space, they were here to consume it. "Sir," the tactical officer reported. "Enemy vessels are moving to intercept. I count 300 ships converging on our position." Kane looked at the odds displayed on his screen. 300 alien vessels against his fleet of 5,000. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a slaughter. But these weren't normal circumstances, and the aliens were about to learn what happened when you threatened a species that had evolved in hell. "All ships," Kane broadcasted on the fleet frequency. "Remember who we are. Remember what we're fighting for. We are the children of Earth, the inheritors of a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We are the species that looked at the vacuum of space and decided to live there. We are humanity, and we do not go quietly into the night." The battle began with a symphony of destruction that lit up the void. Human ships poured fire into the alien formations, their weapons systems pushed beyond safe limits. Quantum torpedoes and plasma cannons tore through the organic hulls, while kinetic weapons fired from mining ships shattered alien armor like glass. But the aliens adapted quickly, their ships learning from each attack and adjusting their defenses. What had been devastating weapons became barely effective as the enemy vessels changed their molecular structure to resist different forms of energy. "They're adapting to our weapons," Captain Mitchell reported. "Standard armaments are becoming ineffective." Kane watched as one of the mining ships, the Iron Will, was overwhelmed by alien fire. The ship's hull cracked like an egg, venting atmosphere and crew into the void. But even as it died, the mining ship fired one last salvo, not with weapons, but with the mining charges from its hold. The improvised weapons struck the alien ship with the force of nuclear explosions, and for a moment, the organic hull couldn't adapt fast enough. The alien vessel buckled and collapsed, its bioluminescent patterns flickering out like dying stars. "Did you see that?" Kane asked. "They can adapt to energy weapons, but they have trouble with kinetic impacts and explosives. All ships," he broadcasted, "switch to kinetic weapons and explosives. Use mining charges, torpedo casings, anything that goes boom. These things can't adapt to good old-fashioned physics." The tide of battle began to turn as the human fleet adapted their tactics. Ships that had been designed for mining and construction became weapons of war. The massive or crushers from the asteroid belt became kinetic projectiles that could punch through any armor. The fusion torches used for terraforming became devastating beam weapons that could melt through alien hulls. But it was the prison ships that proved most effective. The criminals and military prisoners who crewed those vessels had no interest in following regulations or playing fair. They used every dirty trick, every underhanded tactic, every piece of forbidden knowledge they had learned in their careers. The prison ship Redemption rammed an alien vessel at full speed, its hull reinforced with armor plating from dismantled mining equipment. The impact tore both ships apart, but the alien vessel's ability to adapt was useless against the simple physics of mass and velocity. Another prison ship, the Defiance, used its tractor beam to grab chunks of debris and hurl them at enemy vessels like a giant slingshot. The improvised weapons struck with devastating effect, overwhelming the aliens' ability to adapt. But for every alien ship destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. The massive organic structure at the center of the system was spawning new vessels, growing them like fruit from a poisonous tree. "Admiral," Captain Mitchell said, her voice tight with worry. "At this rate, we're going to be overwhelmed. We need to take out that central structure." Kane studied the tactical display, his mind racing. The structure was massive, easily the size of a small planet. It was defended by hundreds of ships, and approaching it would be suicide. But if they didn't stop it, it would continue to spawn new vessels until the human fleet was overwhelmed. "All ships," he broadcasted, "form up on the Retribution. We're going to make a run at that structure." "Sir," his weapons officer called out, "we don't have enough firepower to destroy something that size." Kane smiled, and it was the expression of a man who had just decided to do something monumentally stupid and heroic. "We're not going to destroy it, Lieutenant. We're going to give it indigestion." The human fleet formed up around the Retribution, using the massive dreadnought as a shield as they pushed deeper into the system. Alien ships swarmed around them like angry wasps, their weapons tearing into the human formation. Ships began to fall. The research vessel Discovery was caught in a crossfire and torn apart, its crew dying as they transmitted their final sensor readings to the fleet. The mining ship Deep Digger sacrificed itself to protect a group of smaller vessels, ramming an alien dreadnought and taking it down in a ball of fusion fire. But the human fleet pressed on, driven by the knowledge that failure meant the end of their species. As they approached the central structure, Kane could see it more clearly. It wasn't just feeding on the star's energy, it was transforming it, turning the solar system into something alien and hostile. The very space around it seemed to writhe with malevolent life. "Target the structure's core," Kane ordered. "All ships, fire everything we have." The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Quantum torpedoes, plasma cannons, kinetic weapons, and improvised explosives all struck the massive structure. But the organic hull absorbed the damage, rippling like water before solidifying again. "It's not working," Captain Mitchell reported. "The structure is too large, too well defended." Kane watched as more human ships fell to the alien defenders. They were running out of time, running out of ships, running out of hope. But then he remembered something, a lesson from his days at the Academy, a study of ancient Earth history. "Sometimes," he said aloud, "the best way to kill a giant is from the inside." He turned to his communications officer. "Get me a direct line to the Retribution's engine room." "Sir? I'm going to do something that's either going to save humanity or destroy this entire system. Possibly both." The connection was established, and Kane found himself talking to Chief Engineer Rodriguez, a man who had spent his life working with the most dangerous energy sources known to humanity. "Chief," Kane said, "I need you to override the safety systems on our artificial black hole generators." There was a long pause. "Sir, that would create a cascade failure. The resulting explosion would tear a hole in spacetime itself," Kane finished. "I know. Do it." "Sir, the Retribution has a crew of 2,000 people. If we do this." "Chief, if we don't do this, the human race is extinct. The choice is ours." Another pause, then Rodriguez's voice came back, steady and professional. "Understood, sir. Beginning override sequence now." Kane turned to his bridge crew, men and women who had served with him for years. "Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an honor serving with you. All hands, prepare for emergency evacuation." "Sir," Captain Mitchell said, "there's nowhere to evacuate to. The alien ships will pick off the escape pods." Kane looked at the tactical display, where the human fleet was being slowly ground down by superior numbers. "Then we'll have to trust that our sacrifice means something." The Retribution began to accelerate toward the alien structure, its engines pushed beyond safe limits. Around them, the remaining human ships formed a protective screen, sacrificing themselves to give the dreadnought a clear path. The prison ship Redemption threw itself between the Retribution and a group of alien interceptors, its hull cracking under the impact of energy weapons. The mining ship Iron Maiden used its tractor beam to grab an alien vessel and hold it in place as both ships were destroyed by crossfire. But the Retribution pressed on, its hull blowing with heat as it approached the alien structure. In the engine room, Chief Rodriguez worked frantically to override systems that had been designed to prevent exactly what he was doing. 30 seconds to impact, the navigation officer reported. Kane opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Kane. If you can hear this transmission, know that you have served humanity with honor. Tell them we remembered who we were." The Retribution struck the alien structure like a spear thrust into the heart of a giant. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the artificial black hole generators went critical, and spacetime itself began to tear. The explosion was visible from 1,000 light-years away. The alien structure, the harvested star, the entire system, everything was consumed in a cascade of exotic energy that rewrote the laws of physics in a sphere of space 10 light-years across. When the energy finally dissipated, there was nothing left but an empty void and the scattered debris of two fleets that had fought to the death. But across human space, the war was just beginning. The news of the Battle of Kepler 442 spread through human space like wildfire. The death of Admiral Kane and the Retribution became a rallying cry for resistance. The aliens had shown that they could be defeated, that their seemingly invincible technology had limits. More importantly, humanity had learned how to fight them. The next phase of the war was unlike anything in human history. It wasn't fought by professional soldiers in organized fleets. It was fought by miners and farmers, by scientists and engineers, by criminals and saints. Every human colony, every outpost, every settlement became a fortress. The aliens had expected to face a civilization like the others they had conquered, centralized, organized, predictable. Instead, they found themselves fighting a species that had spread across the galaxy like a virus, that had no central authority to decapitate, no single point of failure to exploit. On the ice world of Hoth, the colonists used their knowledge of extreme environments to create weapons that could function in absolute zero. They turned the planet's surface into a maze of tunnels and bunkers, using the hostile environment as a weapon against the invaders. On the desert world of Aridus, the settlers who had learned to survive in an environment where the sand could strip flesh from bone showed the aliens what true environmental warfare looked like. They disappeared into the dunes like ghosts, striking at alien patrols and vanishing before retaliation could arrive. But it was the response from Earth's deep space colonies that truly showed the galaxy what humanity was capable of. The generation ships that had been traveling to distant stars for decades turned around and came home, their crews trained in the art of long-term survival in hostile environments. The asteroid miners of the belt formed their own fleet, using their knowledge of orbital mechanics and zero-gravity combat to harass alien supply lines. They struck like pirates, appearing out of the void to destroy alien vessels before disappearing back into the darkness. The deep-sea colonists of Europa and Enceladus used their submarines to hide beneath the ice, emerging to strike at alien landing parties before retreating to their underwater cities. They turned the crushing depths into a weapon, using pressure and cold to destroy alien equipment. But perhaps the most terrifying response came from the prison colonies. The maximum security facilities on Titan and Europa had been emptied, their inmates given a choice: fight for humanity or die with the rest of the species. Most had chosen to fight, and they brought with them a knowledge of violence and mayhem that even the aliens found disturbing. The war raged for months, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The aliens had superior technology and numbers, but humanity had something they didn't understand: the ability to adapt, to improvise, to never give up no matter how hopeless the situation seemed. It was during this phase of the war that the first reports began to come in of something new: humans who had been captured and converted by the aliens, but who had somehow retained their humanity. They called themselves the Resistance, and they brought with them intelligence about the alien collective that changed everything. The aliens weren't just a single species, they were a collective consciousness made up of dozens of conquered civilizations. Each species they assimilated added to their knowledge, their technology, their abilities. But the process wasn't perfect, and sometimes individuals managed to retain their original identity while appearing to be fully converted. These double agents provided humanity with its first real intelligence about the alien collective. They learned that the aliens were not invincible, that they had weaknesses that could be exploited. Most importantly, they learned that the collective had a central node, a massive bioship that coordinated the activities of all the other vessels. The location of this central node was a closely guarded secret, but the Resistance managed to discover it. The ship was hidden in a nebula at the edge of human space, surrounded by a fleet of 1,000 vessels. The news reached Earth Command just as the third wave of alien attacks was beginning. The aliens had learned from their previous defeats and were adapting their tactics, using humanity's own knowledge against them. The war was reaching a tipping point, and humanity needed a decisive victory to survive. The response was swift and overwhelming. Every human ship that could still fly, every weapon that could still fire, every person who could still fight was mobilized for one final battle. The Second Great Armada, as it came to be known, was twice the size of the first, and infinitely more desperate. At its head was a new flagship, the UES Retribution II, built from the wreckage of destroyed colonies and crewed by the survivors of 100 battles.